you led me straight to the fall. I'm broken, I'm still trying skin and bone.
Natalia Grace Barnett had a rare form of dwarfism, not only leaving her at only 3 feet tall, but it also affected her daily functions, including walking. She came to America from the Ukraine, hoping to have a better life and hoping to find a good family, and was eventually adopted, but that soon became a national story where the family claimed that she was an adult who wanted to hurt the family. This case, however, was very similar to a movie called The Orphan. The Orphan was about a girl from Russia coming over to America, was secretly an adult, and wanted to hurt the family she was adopted by, which made a lot of people question, was the family taking inspiration from the movie to discredit this girl that they just adopted? The news story would grow and grow, leaving everyone wondering, was she a murderous adult psychopath pretending to be a kid? Or did the family neglect a young child who could barely fend for themselves alone in an attempt to save money instead of paying the medical bills? Today, we are going in and finding the truth about the case of Natalia Barnett. Here is the timeline. The beginning of the story kind of has some mixed opinions of when it exactly started, but some say that Natalia Grace, born in 2004, came to America around the age of 4 in about 2008, was adopted from the Ukraine by her new parents who gave her up for undisclosed reasons. Though most articles don't cite that, but some people did say that she was adopted by some families who had just nice things to say. But some people did say she did have a family that did complain that she tried to break their son's arm. Not exactly sure, only some articles cite both of these stories. Either way though, those couples had not much to say. They aren't involved in the overall lawsuit. They can only be kind of used as circumstantial evidence. Going on though to 2010, a Indiana couple, Christine and Michael Barnett, found and adopted Natalia. And of course, this family in theory would just be a perfect fit for Natalia. The couple had history with raising kids with special needs, which would be perfect. Christine even wrote a book called Spark, which was about her son who had autism, and was a motivational speaker for raising kids with different needs. So in theory, you would expect that this family, who had a history of being good with these situations, saw this kid and just wanted to help them out. Though over the next 2 to 3 years, the couple grew kind of concerned over the girl they just adopted. Now, this is a lot of things that they said. There is not really any evidence of these things happening at the current time, which puts into some debate of if these things were true, and Natalia herself would later on, once old enough, debate some of these claims on shows like Dr. Phil. Christine would notice that the daughter would kind of just have an advanced vocabulary and had no interest in sort of like regular kid things like toys and stuff like that she would want to play with the older kids, which, you know, some kids just don't like toys and some kids just want to play with the older kids. But that's not really kind of like the main complaint, because a lot of the things that she also claims are just a bit more serious. She would eventually start claiming that the daughter had second sex characteristics and that she got her period and was hiding it from the family. More, you know, kind of things like, oh, this kid is an adult. And on top of that, she would start to claim that Natalia had some not so normal behaviors. She would claim that Natalia would start to draw pictures saying that she wanted to kill her family, eventually tried to put Windex in the mom's coffee, and when confronted about it, she just straight up said that she was trying to poison the mom. She would also start to stand over the bed while they were sleeping and attack the younger kid and try to drag the mom to an electric fence. Later on though, Natalia would say her side of the story was that they were just relatively near the fence and she tripped due to having issues with walking, tried to grab the mom for safety, that she was not trying to drag her whatsoever. And a lot of people would also kind of debunk this claim in their own words, pretty much summarizing it though, is that how would a 3-foot tall girl drag a full-size grown adult to an electric fence without it kind of just being laughable? Now, eventually, due to this behavior, they sent Natalie to a psychiatric hospital. She allegedly told the therapist she was in fact an adult, which is kind of just an issue with the later cases, that if this quote is true, she did admit to it. Though a lot of people would say, and Natalie herself did say, that she was kind of at this time trained to be an adult and that she was told to tell people she was an adult, and that it kind of falls under a similar behavior of abuse victims, that if she was being told constantly to say this, even though she knows she's not an adult, she would kind of start to sit there and believe that, maybe she's wrong, maybe she's an adult. Though this is a big contention point of maybe she is an adult, and due to the professional help and abilities of psychiatric hospitals, and the therapist being able to talk to her, that she did in fact admit this and she is in fact an adult. Now, this is a part of the case where it becomes a bit tricky. This is the part where it goes from what the family was claiming Natalie was doing to what Natalie started claiming that they did, though there is just kind of a lot of evidence to support her claims, though we'll kind of get into the kind of more debatable points in a moment. In around 2013, they got Natalie her own apartment and said she would eventually stop talking to the family, making Christine worried that she was pretending to be a kid again, and also even went on to claim that they found childhood-like things like a pink dress and a pink bicycle at her new house. Now, during this time period is one of the main debatable things of she is in fact an adult. Even Dr. Phil kind of asked her about this, and the question pretty much is left for about a year. How could she have the ability to live on her own? I mean, some people would say that she got evicted. I only saw one or two articles quote that. But, I mean, there is some debatable points. She didn't have to pay rent or work or anything like that. The rent was prepaid by the family, who left canned foods, which are technically easy to cook. But even at that young age, I just don't see her as being able to survive a year, though Natalie will claim that she did get some help throughout that period of time from the landlord and other people. But another contention point is that her parents enrolled her in kind of an adult school, so how could she go to school and last in the school for about a year when she is a child? And I know what some of you are wondering, how could they enroll a little child in an adult school? Wouldn't her birth certificate say she is a kid? Well, around this time, before abandoning Natalie in the apartment, they took her to a family doctor, at least they claimed, and that she got a bone density test, and that bone density test, in their words, showed evidence that she is older than what she said. But there was some debate in that evidence, and we'll get into that later, and they took her to a judge who legally changed her birth certificate, now making her from a 9-year-old kid to 22 years old. And this would be kind of a hard point later on in the case, and we'll get to that later. But this was kind of like one of the most quoted pieces of evidence, besides her living on her own for that year, was how could the bone density test be that different from her actual age? She must be lying, right? Well, seeing some comments from people who also got the same test would actually kind of defend Natalie, saying that if their bone density test was coded to be their age, they would also have to legally change their birthday. And also, some people had criticism pretty much because it was a family doctor. But around this time, the changed her birthday. It was set in stone. They said they were trying to get her the help she needs. But after leaving her in her own apartment, they left and went to Canada. Eventually, the husband would go back to Indiana, but they would leave, go to Canada for a specialty school for one of their sons. Now, this would be quoted to be kind of Natalie's big defense, was that the family did all of this to abandon the kid so they can have more money and more time to focus on their son instead of helping the kid with their medical bills. And even the new family of Natalie's would say that this is what they were probably doing. And of course, around this time, Natalie did find a new family who found her on the street all alone and would take her in, eventually found out what was happening. And they will, of course, later on try to adopt the kid, which they had issues and never were able to legally adopt the kid due to being, legally an adult according to the birth certificate. And, jumping ahead into the case, they did try to change it, and that just didn't work. And of course, in about 2014, Natalie will give a statement to the police, and the family was officially charged with child neglect. And this is where the court case starts to get crazy. Now, the court case isn't over yet, but we will talk about all the developments inside the courtroom and outside in this time period. In around 2016, the doctor would come forward citing more than just a bone density test, saying that the dental record, secondary sex characteristics, and even, and I quote, saying she is substantially older than she claims to be. So the doctor is coming forward. They are staying strong to what they said and saying that they have more evidence to defend the fact that they are, in fact, an adult. Police kind of have a bit of a different story though. They said that these tests prove nothing more than she is the age she claims to be, saying that the test doesn't actually show she's that much older, and that they only prove that they are, in fact, a child. Of course, we'll get to a point later on in the court case which will explain why these points were not much debated. Now, also around this time period, it is also important to quote that the dad and mother separated, which I believe they're now being tried in two different court cases. Now in 2019, they were eventually charged with more counts. There are 2 accounts of felony abandonment, with a trial set for 2020. They were both pleaded not guilty. And now, as everyone expected, it was up to the courtroom to decide, was she an adult or was she a kid? And of course, the felony abandonment and neglect charges now also being added on top of, with saying that Natalie needed proper medical attention, which they ignored, being added to the court case as well. Which is, of course, good for Natalie. That was her biggest defense, that she was, in fact, a kid, was that they abandoned her due to not wanting to pay the medical bills. So if they can prove that they, in fact, abandoned her and didn't want to pay these medical bills and they didn't help her medically, that her reason is kind of what happened. During this time period, Christine always stayed strong with her story, but her now ex-husband has admitted to kind of lying, and that she convinced him to do it, and that Christine told Natalie to tell people that she was 22, but he did later deny this, and there were some contention points. He is saying that he never said that, though there is some quotes of him saying that. So was he just trying to sell the wife, now ex-wife of course, down the river, or did he admit to these things? Did he ever even admit to these things? A big questioning point. We'll see if the court case addresses that. Now, also on this time period, they even asked the mom about the similarities to the movie. And when asked about how her situation was similar to the movie, she was quoted saying, "The movie is exactly what happened." So she is even recognizing that the movie is similar, which is not the best way to respond to criticism that she saw the movie and used that as her way out. Now, of course, also around this time that Natalie would go on shows like Dr. Phil, keeping to her own story, and the both mom would eventually come forward, claiming her daughter is telling the truth, and went on to explain that she got rid of her daughter, saying that the doctors kind of just explained her medical situation so much to her that it kind of made her scared that she wasn't able to take care of the daughter, and that's why she was given up, which would again follow into the same story that she had a big medical history that was expensive. In 2020, the court continued to uphold the new birth year, and combined with statute of limitations, a lot of the charges ended up being dropped. Though the court case is still going just for a neglect and abandonment type things, for neglect of a, physically disabled person, and that she was still in their care and that they still were supposed to provide for. With, in the following months, more court cases and more dates have been set. And it's unfortunate because unless one side claims, the truth and says that, hey, I was lying this entire time, we will never know because the court case is no longer proving that she was a child. But from what I saw and what I read, in my opinion, there's only a few pieces of evidence that proves that she's an adult, and that's, in fact, for a year, she was mainly by herself. How would she be able to, kind of provide for herself in that time period? But there's a lot of evidence proving that she isn't lying. Because, if, in fact, she was a murderous adult, where is the picture she drawed? Where is that, bicycle she bought? Where's all this evidence of these things happening? Because you would assume she would keep it. She did take a lot of photos around that time of Natalie and her son. So where's the photos of this bicycle? You think you would take photos of these things for future reference. But these photos and evidence doesn't seem to exist. I haven't seen it. So I am kind of led to believe they didn't exist. And that maybe from some miracle this kid survived on their own for a year. That's kind of just like the hardest point to get over though. How did she survive? But where's the evidence? And now with the court case not being about the child part for at least now, there is not likely gonna ever see if they had that evidence or not. I don't think they do. And in my opinion, I am led to believe she is in fact a kid. Because she's been with that new family for like 6 years and hasn't done a single thing. The only way that would be possible is if the new family is in on it, pretending to take care of the kid to get the parents arrested. But where would be the gain in that? And still, you would think if she was that crazy, she would hurt the new family anyways. So I'm led to believe she isn't harming the new family. She is in fact a child, and that the family neglected her to not pay the medical bills. But we will see. There is more court cases and more dates set, so we'll see if one side wins. I have been Birdime. Hope you enjoyed this insane case. It was so hard to kind of put everything together and, date everything. It was a lot of hearsay, she-say, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if, a more definitive story comes out later, though I think the timeline was rather accurate. We'll see, though, if more things get added. I've been Birdime. Make sure you have a good night.
I'm done with hitting your wall. Short notice, I just gotta let you know. You led me straight to the fall. I'm broken, I'm still trying, skin and bones.